You may believe you chose the right woman for her beauty and femininity, but she could actually be the worst decision of your life and ruin your future generation. Imagine this. She enchanted you with a look, but it was in the silence between her words that you lost yourself. Because the truth is simple, brutal, and often invisible. You don't know who she really is. Most men walk through life as if in a theater of illusions, applauding actresses they barely know. They smile at women who embody their unconscious desires and give their hearts, sometimes their sanity, to characters who exist only in their imagination. And the tragedy isn't falling in love with the wrong woman. The tragedy is never realizing that the error wasn't in her. It was in what you chose to see. This is where the collapse of fantasy begins. For millennia, philosophers, psychologists, and strategists have warned, the man who fails to see the psychological reality of another will inevitably be manipulated by her. Nietzsche said that happiness is the feeling that power grows, that a resistance has been overcome. But how do you overcome a resistance you don't know exists? How do you identify a lie when it comes packaged in laughter, perfume, and looks that make you feel desired? The truth is, you're not prepared to read a woman's character because you've never learned to read your own. Yes, that's the first blow. Truly reading another requires an internal confrontation. What you ignore in yourself, you also ignore in others. And if you're blind to your own shortcomings, insecurities, and traumas, you'll be a perfect target for a woman who's learned to disguise hers. But why does this matter so much? Because we live in an age where disguise has become identity. Where charisma hides chaos, lightness disguises coldness, and sweetness is often just a layer of emotional manipulation. And if you don't learn to see beyond the surface, you'll forever be a spectator in a theater where the next scene always ends with you being used, discarded, or emotionally enslaved. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine walking into a room and in seconds, realizing what's behind her laughter, feeling the fear she's trying to hide in her tone of voice, seeing, in her shining eyes, the emptiness she disguises. This is the kind of power few men possess, and many pay dearly for not developing it. And when I say power, I don't mean domination. It's lucidity. It's freedom. It's the ability to choose who you engage with instead of being swept up in an emotional narrative that was never yours. But to do this, you need to go beyond body language tricks or lists of red flags. What you'll discover here aren't techniques. They're lenses. A code for reading emotions based on deep psychology, practical experience, and a level of self-awareness that's frightening, because it reveals not only who they are, but who you are when you interact with them. In this video, you'll learn to dismantle illusions, to break through the most seductive charms, not coldly, but clearly. You'll understand why you confuse charm with value, seduction with depth, and you'll discover a new map to navigate the most dangerous territory of seduction. The territory where masks are more beautiful, but also more lethal. There's nothing more dangerous than a man in love with his own neediness. Because he's not seeing the woman in front of him, he's seeing the distorted reflection of what he believes he needs to feel whole. And this is the first poison of emotional reading, confusing desire with discernment. She smiles, looks you in the eyes, touches her hair, and talks about travels, dreams, and books. And you, convinced you're in front of someone different, begin to fill in the gaps with pieces of your imagination. Every gesture becomes a signal. Every silence becomes depth. Every attention becomes connection. But none of it is real. What you're feeling is merely the projection of the idealized figure your mind created, based on wounds you never healed. Because the man who has never felt validated by a maternal figure unconsciously seeks confirmation in a woman's gaze that he is worthy of love. And the needier he is, the quicker he surrenders. The blinder he becomes. He doesn't see a woman. He sees a promise. Promise of affection, attention, redemption. And it's precisely this emotional hunger that makes him incapable of discerning character from charisma. Here begins the illusion of reflection. You fall in love with how she makes you feel, not with who she is. This is the oldest and most ignored psychological pattern in the dynamic between men and women. Freud called it emotional transference, the unconscious process where repressed feelings are projected onto another person as if they were the source of those feelings. But in practice, it means something more brutal. You look at her with the eyes of a boy who was never loved. And any crumb of attention becomes an emotional feast. The problem? Women sense it. Those who have emotional awareness, even if distorted, perceive when a man is projecting onto them the mission to heal him. And while some run away, others use it, not out of pure malice, but because they also have their own inner games. And if they've learned that emotional control guarantees stability, they'll manipulate your desire for control. They'll act harmless, intense, sensitive, all to keep alive their hope that this time it will be different. But it won't be, because you're not in a relationship with a woman. You're in a relationship with a reflection of what your soul craves. And until you destroy that mirror, you'll be captive to the image you project. Cleopatra dominated emperors not just with beauty or intelligence. She was, above all, a mirror, a powerful reflection of those men's fantasies and ambitions. She didn't offer love, she offered projection, and they surrendered not to her but to the idea of what she represented. Julius Caesar and Mark Antony didn't fall for her. They fell for what they saw when they looked at her. This is no different from what happens today, when a man confuses attention with admiration, sympathy with interest, or sensuality with depth. But why is this pattern so hard to break? Because recognizing this requires facing a painful truth. Most of your passions weren't about her. They were about you, about your emptiness, about your fear of not being chosen, about your urgency to mean something to someone. It's a silent theater where you are the actor, the director, and the audience, and she is merely the stage. Men who fall in love easily are usually men who know very little about themselves. The rush to dive into a new story is proportional to their avoidance of looking within. It's more comfortable to idealize than to investigate, more exciting to imagine than to observe. And so, most continue to live repeated cycles of enchantment and disappointment, believing the problem lies within themselves, without realizing that the flaw lies in the filter. If you want to truly understand a woman's character, you need to start by reading your own script. You need to dismantle the narrative you've constructed about what it means to love, to be loved, to be desired. You need to map out the triggers that make you idealize someone in a 15-minute conversation. What traits hypnotize you? What phrases seduce you? Because these are precisely the points that reveal your emotional blindness. Want an example? Observe your body's reaction when a woman shows too much interest right from the start. For most men, this is a positive sign. But for the emotional strategist, it's a wake-up call. Because true love doesn't blossom in seconds. It's built. Instant interest can be authentic, or it can be a game, a mirroring, a performance. And the worst part is, often she's not even aware of it. Women, like men, learn from an early age to manipulate to survive. And this manipulation isn't always malicious, it's instinctive. If she understands that being sweet brings security, she'll overdo it. If she realizes that vulnerability yields protection, she'll appear fragile. But none of this defines character. It only shows her skill in interpreting what you want to see. Therefore, your greatest shield against female emotional manipulation isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Clarity about who you are, clarity about what you seek, clarity about what seduces you. Only then can you see beyond the character and see the real story. And this reading always begins with what she's trying to hide, with the inconsistency, with the contradiction between what she says and what she conveys. The tone of her voice, the length of her response, the hesitant look, the smile that lingers longer than it should. Every tiny detail reveals a layer. And if you're present, emotionally present, you'll feel the disconnect. And then, you'll see what almost no man sees, the disconnect between what she appears and what she is. But none of this will be possible if you continue to seek in women the validation you should have found within yourself. As long as your focus is on being loved, you will be a hostage to approval, to neediness, to performance. And what's worse, you will be an emotional slave to any woman who knows how to manipulate your affections. This is where the turning point comes in, the shift in focus, the key. True power lies in looking a woman in the eyes and realizing, in seconds, whether she is whole or just acting, whether she is there or selling herself, whether she is real or a reflection. And this is only possible when you no longer need her to save you, love you, heal you, when you are whole, when you no longer trade your clarity for a kiss, a caress, a promise. When this happens, you don't become cold, you become free. Free to choose, free to observe, free to see. And in this freedom, you not only protect yourself, you begin to attract women who are also free. Because as Ortega y Gasset said, to love is to surrender to fascination, but only those who are conscious choose who to surrender to. Ultimately, the right woman isn't the one who enchants you, she's the one who reveals you. In many cases, the method I call broken mirror may appear. She seemed perfect, the perfect smile, the sharp responses, a touch of shyness at the right time, just the right intensity, sensitive stories, open wounds with millimeter precision to make you feel special. You, of course, believed it. And for a few days, maybe weeks, you felt you had found a woman unlike any other. The problem? It wasn't her you were seeing. It was the mirror. An intelligent, trained mirror, adapted to reflect exactly what you wanted to see. This is the second level of illusion. More sophisticated, more dangerous, and much more common than you imagine. While in the first stage, the error lies in you projecting your needs onto her. In this second stage, the game changes. It is she who projects onto you the role she wants you to play. And if you are not emotionally awake, you will assume this role with pride, without realizing you have entered a narrative that was never yours. The mirror is broken, and the reflection you see is manipulated by invisible cracks, traumas, insecurities, emotional wounds that she hides beneath layers of charm, sweetness, and performance. The emotionally unstable woman doesn't want to appear unbalanced. She wants to appear irresistible. And to do that, she needs to protect herself. She needs to disguise herself. She needs to seduce. That's why often the most emotionally dangerous women are also the most charming at first glance. The psychologist Carl Jung said, "What we do not face in ourselves, we will find as fate." And emotionally unresolved women are experts at shaping the ideal persona to attract exactly the kind of man who will nourish them emotionally. They don't want a partner, they want a validation provider, a caretaker for their unconscious pain, a mirror so they can feel alive without ever needing to truly heal. They learn early on to identify the type of man who responds to a certain energy. Some invest in the nice girl, others in the mysterious. Some use intelligence as a shield, others use the body as a weapon. But the goal is the same, to hide internal chaos under a controlled aesthetic. The performance is involuntary in many cases, but the effect is lethal. The average man sees charm, the strategist sees a signal. The woman who laughs at everything may be protecting herself from emptiness. The woman who speaks in a sweet voice all the time may be so afraid of rejection that she can't set boundaries. The woman who presents herself as free and detached may actually be someone who never learned to bond healthily. And you, if you're not emotionally clear, will interpret all this as, she's incredible, she's light, she's different, when in reality, she's just disguised. The danger of the broken mirror lies precisely in its ability to distort what is profound and make what is actually unstable seem charming. Let's get real. She tells you about her ex who was toxic, and you believe her. She says she doesn't like drama, and you relax. She texts you every day, says she misses you, that she's never met anyone like you. You feel unique. But then she starts disappearing, testing, making you jealous, playing with your emotions. And you don't understand what's happening. But it's simple. The initial narrative was the bond. What comes next is the truth. This behavior isn't rare. It's in fact standard. Many women, by not dealing with their own trauma, begin to reproduce emotional patterns of rejection, abandonment, or control. They don't do it on purpose. They do it by design. And the man who doesn't recognize this early finds himself trapped in a game of blame, hope, and confusion, thinking he needs to do more to get back to her original self. But she was never that. That was just the enchanting armor. The French philosopher Pascal said, "The heart has reasons that reason knows nothing about, but the wounded heart has strategies that reason refuses to see." This is where the strategic reader comes in. The man who observes more than he listens, who feels more than he is impressed, who doesn't let himself be carried away by sweet words because he knows that too much sweetness can also be anesthetic. And how to identify this? It's not about judging or accusing, it's about perceiving. Reading a woman's character involves a delicate but precise observation of subtle inconsistencies. See if the speech matches the behavior, if the intensity matches the timing, if the energy matches the gaze. An emotionally unstable woman almost always betrays signs of imbalance, but only to those who know how to read. Does she have sudden outbursts, test her limits, show jealousy without real connection? These aren't signs of passion, they're symptoms of deep insecurity. But there's an even more subtle and more revealing point: the way she criticizes others. Every woman projects what she doesn't accept in herself onto the image of others. So observe what she despises in other women. Observe how she talks about friends, ex-partners, female public figures. What she condemns is usually what she tries to hide. This is the most transparent mirror. Judgment. Those who don't know themselves accuse. Those who hate themselves transfer. Those who are lost idealize or destroy. But be careful. All this doesn't mean you should live with paranoid distrust. It means you need to live with emotional clarity. This requires you to train your senses to see beyond the surface. To listen not only to what she says, but how she says it. To see not only her eyes, but also what her eyes can't hide. The tone of her voice, the micro-expression, the silence after an unexpected question, the laugh that comes before the joke ends, the hesitation between two words. All of this forms a map, and this map, if read correctly, reveals the hidden regions of her character. Those she hides from you, but most importantly, from herself. That's why true reading begins with frustration. Put a woman under pressure and see what emerges. Withdraw constant attention for a few days and observe. Set a limit and analyze the response. Note whether she accepts a no with maturity or with manipulation disguised as sensitivity. An emotionally stable woman is stronger when contradicted. An unstable woman becomes disorganized. The former breathes, processes, and responds. The latter explodes, freezes, or tries to control. This is the breaking point where character unravels and true character emerges. So what do you do with this reading? You act consciously. You decide with sovereignty. You perceive whether it's a worthwhile relationship or an emotional bomb smelling of passion. It's not about judging the woman's pain. It's about deciding whether you're willing to pay the price of living with someone who doesn't know where their own chaos ends. Because you're not here to heal anyone. You're here to connect with those who have already decided to heal themselves. And that changes everything. Because when you start to see behind the mirror, the social game changes. You're not enchanted by promises, you connect with truths. You don't pursue intensity, you build depth. And finally, you begin to attract women who don't need you to complete themselves, but choose to walk with you because they're already complete. And herein lies the paradox. As you develop this understanding, you begin to see beauty in unexpected places. In women who don't have ready-made phrases, but have lucid silence. In women who don't display their pain, but speak about it with maturity. In women who don't seduce by their absence, but by their presence. And what's more, you stop idealizing, and you begin to see. Now that you've learned to see what's behind the smile, behind the touch, behind the well-told story, what comes next? What comes after disillusionment isn't cynicism, it's lucidity. And lucidity, contrary to what many think, doesn't take away the magic. It takes away the poison. When you begin to see the hidden code behind female behavior, you stop being a puppet of emotional reactions and become the author of your own narrative. But this code isn't found in body language books or ready-made phrases. It's in the rhythms, in the recurring patterns that shape a woman's character, long before she meets you. And understanding these rhythms changes everything. Every woman has an emotional history that determines how she reacts to rejection, admiration, frustration, desire, and silence. These responses aren't random. They are scripts internalized since childhood. The way she relates to her father figure, the type of validation she received or didn't receive, the amount of work she had to do to be accepted. All of this forms the code that, if you know how to decipher it, gives you an almost frightening clarity. The woman who changes her tone of voice when she's contradicted is showing how much her identity depends on approval. The one who overcompliments in the beginning is trying to secure emotional territory for fear of abandonment. The one who needs to be desired all the time has probably been conditioned to believe that value is measured by male desire. But she's not the only one who has a code. You do too. And this is where many fail. Because deciphering the other without having deciphered yourself is like trying to read a map blindfolded. You confuse projection with perception. You think you understand, but you only saw what you wanted to see. True reading begins when you understand how your traumas and patterns intertwine with hers. And that's more dangerous than it seems. Because when two wounded codes connect, the most powerful illusion in the world is born, that it was fate. You don't want fate. You want choice. You want awareness. And to achieve that, you need to go beyond reading the woman. You need to read the context, the environment, the moment. You need to perceive how much she molds herself to please, and how willing you are to believe it. How far she distances herself from her own feelings, and how much you pretend not to see it. How much she tries to convince you of her own depth, and how much this pleases you because it reaffirms your ego. This code is in everything. In the haste with which she clings, in the excess of vulnerability that seems like intimacy, in the way she reacts to your silence. Each of these signs reveals the degree of emotional maturity she has reached, and the role you play in this drama. And then comes the dilemma. Do you confront it or feed it? Do you show that you saw it or pretend not to? Most pretend. Because confronting the code is breaking the seduction. It's putting lucidity above pleasure. It's risking losing the connection in exchange for maintaining your emotional integrity. But the true strategist doesn't negotiate with self-deception. He prefers the truth that distances to the illusion that addicts. And most brutal of all, when you confront them, many of them can't sustain the character. Because the character needs their unconscious to survive. They need, their fantasy, their blind desire. When you take that away, only she's left. And she's not always ready to be truly seen. But sometimes, she is. And that's when everything changes. Because when you find a woman who can bear to be read, who can bear to be seen without a mask, who remains behind the mirror, then you have something rare. Not a romance, but a connection between consciousnesses. Between two beings who don't need illusion to feel desire. Who don't need masks to maintain interest. Who don't use pain as emotional currency. This woman exists, but she only reveals herself to those with trained eyes. For those who have read the darkest pages of themselves and therefore can embrace the shadow of another without losing themselves. For those who don't seek to fall in love but to connect. For those who live not in reflection but in presence. Reading a woman's character is a gift, but it's also a risk. Because when you read, you see. And when you see, you can no longer unsee. But perhaps this is the price of freedom. Seeing what few see, feeling what few feel, and therefore, choosing with whom few dare to be. This is the hidden code. Now you understand what most men never realize. True power isn't in winning women over, it's in truly seeing them, and even more so in knowing yourself enough to not let yourself be manipulated by charm, looks, or need. From here on, you no longer play the emotional game, you read it, but there's a level above that. A psychological mastery that awakens desire, respect, and connection in a matter of seconds. It's no coincidence that it's been called forbidden knowledge. This is the secret behind the Forbidden Manual. How to awaken desire in 60 seconds. This audiobook isn't about cliches. It's about emotional control, invisible language, and masculine presence. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to prove anything, because women feel it. If you want to stop reacting and start controlling the game, access the audiobook now. It will change the way you relate, communicate, and position yourself with any woman. The power is available, but only for those who have the courage to use it.